Hello everyone, Miss Graduate with Rubies and Moonstones. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you are new to my channel, welcome. I hope you like it here and consider subscribing. And if you are returning, welcome back. Thank you so much for your continued support. I really do value each and every one of you. Today what I'm going to go over with you is what I do to help ensure that I have straight lines when working on my canvas. This is just what I do and have found to be very helpful in keeping my lines looking nice and straight as possible as I go along. Now, they are never going to be perfect, and that is something important that I have learned along the way, is that none of this is ever going to be perfect. There will be spaces at times, and there are supposed to be spaces around your squares. But we can take steps to try and make our lines as straight as possible, and this is one of the things that I have learned. What I'm going to go over with you today is what I have started doing to help make sure that I have lines as straight as possible. And that starts with having a really strong foundation on my edges. So every time that I am working on an edge, whether it is on the sides or the top and bottom, especially on the corners, this is what I have been doing on this canvas, and I think that the lines are looking pretty good. I just thought I would share what I have found to be helpful and see if it could possibly help somebody else. Before we get started, I would just like to point out this beautiful bird. This is Purnell by Richard Lorenz. I have just fallen in love with his birds, and this is the first one that I am completing, and I think that he's turned out really pretty well. I am also using an enhancement pack with this kit from DP with Sparklers, so there are some extra crystals and ABs and things like that in there that are not charted with the original Diamond Art Club kit. But I actually like how I have chosen to place them. I have only used them within the bird and the main pieces themselves. I have not put anything extra on the edges, hoping that that draws all of the attention to the bird. So let's do what we are here to do, and that is focus on creating our solid foundation on our edge. In a previous video that I did, I talked about laying down washi tape or masking tape around the edges to cover up the sticky. Because this is such a large canvas, I did not do that to begin with. I have waited and am putting it down as I go along. And that has actually been really helpful for the step that I am going to show you that I do. So we will pull this down, and the first step that I do is find a card. This is actually from my daughter's special purse, so I'm going to use it. She might steal it back from me if she sees I'm using it, but then I lay the card. You want it to be a card that you don't use regularly, so you probably don't want to choose a credit card or something like that in case you forget it on your canvas. But because there's that little bit of sticky here, I use that to my advantage, and I line up the card with the black line so that there is a firm edge. Okay, and now I'll just press that down, make any adjustments. This will give us a nice firm border to push into. As you can see, there is a little bit of space on the top and there's a little space on the bottom. So in those sections, you just have to be a little bit more careful. I've tried putting two cards next to each other, but because of how these are with the rounded edges, that just doesn't work. This covers most of it, and that's what matters. Now I'm going to use a release paper to cover up the sections that I'm not using. If you don't have release paper, you can use your cover, or you can use parchment paper. never use wax paper. Wax paper is very bad for your canvas and your glue. Only use parchment paper. But if you have release paper, you can use that. That's what I prefer to use. So what I'm going to do, I call it building a 5-lined border. It's technically 6 lines though, because I don't count the first one. I am going to do the first row, and then I'm going to checkerboard in 5 more rows. So I'm going to count out 6 rows and put this down. So there's the first row, and then I do 5 more. 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I lay this down partially so that my hand will not be in any of the sticky, but also because then it just has me focusing in on this section only. I also go ahead and put all of my colors that I'm going to need into the containers, because I am going to fill in the entire checkerboard. There's only 3 colors in this section, so that makes it nice and easy. But I have them preloaded into the containers so that I can just pick up the one that I need and then move on to the next one. On this one, since there is a W at the top, I am going to start with the W. Alright, I've zoomed you in a bit more to hopefully make it easier for you to see what I'm actually doing. So on these first couple, I am just going to be placing very, very carefully up against that edge, since I don't have the card. And I'm also going to start going every other one, just like how we'll do the rest of the checkerboard. Now that I have the card here, I kind of go half on the card and half off, and then I slide onto the canvas and pick up. And that makes it so that this edge is really right next to the card and right next to that line. Additionally, as I am sliding off, I am also pushing towards the card. And that also helps make sure that it lines up right along the edge. Even if you don't slide off the top of the card, you can also just kind of come in from an angle. So in this case, we'll come at it from the right and push it into the card line that way. And that also just ensures that it is getting lined up very straight. Okay, so this is all the W's that I have, but I'm going to want to fill in this entire row first. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with these other colors. Sorry, I realized you couldn't see what I was doing down there, so I moved the camera and accidentally shut it off again, of course. Okay, we have one more color to do. Alright, so now as you can see, we have every other one done. So now we're just going to go back in and fill in the rest so that we have our first line completed, and it's very straight and very solid, and we're going to have that help us later. Okay, so now we have that first row done, and it's a nice solid row, but we're going to leave the card here because as we're filling in the checkerboard pattern, all of the pieces are going to push against each other. And then they can also push against this solid row, and any that might be poking out just a little bit will get pushed back into the position that they need to be, but they won't get pushed out too far that they go past that solid line. So it just helps to solidify where we want them to be. I should also apologize for maybe some background noise. I do have an English bulldog, and she is snoring, so if you hear some snoring in the background, sorry, that's her. Hopefully it is not too distracting. Alright, so now what we are going to do is we are going to fill in this section with our checkerboard pattern. So I'm just going to start at the top. I'm doing my W's. And you are just going to fill in every other square with that color. And this is where having this border helps me, because it helps me know I need to go all the way over to this row, and then I'll have my 5 established rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is the last row that I'll be doing. Sometimes when I run into a big space between colors, I'll say, yes, this is where I needed a square. So nope, yes, no, yes. This is where my next square would be. And then that way I can continue using the exact same color from my tray until they're all placed. In this case, I do have a couple of W's way down here, and it might be kind of hard for me to be accurate going no, yes, all the way down, so I'm going to wait and do those once I get down to it. I am using glue dots in my pen, so if you hear a really nice popping sound, it is from the glue dot. And that's also why sometimes the drill does not come off of my pen as easily as it would if I just had wax in there. So far, I really like using glue dots in my single placers, but I have not really found something that I like using in my multi-placer. I'm trying the glue dots, but I'm not a huge fan at the moment. I've got some putties on the way that I'm going to try out. Now, as I lay each of these down, I do try and put it as centered and straight as I possibly can, but I try not to be too worried about it if it gets off just a little bit. And the reason is because as you lay more drills, they just straighten each other out. And to help prove that, I am going to put this one down completely wrong. I'll zoom you in to see. You can see how this one is diamond shaped as opposed to being square like the rest of them. When I come back and fill that in, it's going to straighten itself out. Now you can use the checkerboard pattern all throughout, especially when you have a large section with a lot of the same color, but even if it's not a large section, but just a few rows with the same color, you can use the checkerboard pattern to help make your placement a bit more exact. You can also use the checkerboard pattern with your multi-placers. And I plan on making a video in the future about the use of multi-placers and how to do that as well. But I don't want to make this video too long, so we're just going to focus on the border here. Alright, now we have every other one. This is a checkerboard pattern. As you can see, it looks like a checkerboard. That's where it gets its name. So there are a few that I didn't mean to purposefully put wonky, like the one that I zoomed in on, but there's a few that are left like that. And like I said, they're going to just straighten themselves out as we go along, and that also happens when you work further into the middle. And because you have this nice solid foundation, it's going to help that along as well. So now is the fun part when we get to go back through and fill in all of the open spots. When you lay down your first checkerboards, that part takes a little bit longer to do, but now when you get to just go in and fill in the gaps, it always seems to go quite a bit faster. So let's get this part done. You also tend to get a nice, satisfying click when you do all of the edges together. Alright, we're on to the wonky one. I'm going to try and zoom in as much as possible. Okay, here is the purposefully placed wonky one, this one right there. This one got kind of wonky on accident. So, as we place our drills, it is going to straighten itself out. There, it moved a little bit. There, it moved a bit more. Now, it's in line like every other one is. And this one kind of straightened itself out as well. We'll add its surrounding pieces. And now it's straightened itself out as well. If it needs a little bit more, you can always put your pen on and turn. If it's really bothering you, you can bring your tweezers out and fix it that way. But as I've been saying, they will straighten themselves out as you go along. Okay, on to our last few drills here. And we have our border foundation complete. So now we have our completed and established border. Now this last row may not be quite as straight as the rest of them in the middle, but as we fill in the rest of this section, this row will straighten itself out as well. And as I said, you might notice some of those little gaps, but that's with the light pad on. I'm going to turn the light pad off, and you really don't see those gaps anymore. And again, especially when you look at it from a distance, you're not going to notice them at all, and nobody else is going to notice them either. So now the last step that I do is I'm going to pull off this card. Now I'm going to put down just a little bit of that masking tape. So you can use clear masking tape like I do, or you can use your washi tape. But I actually like waiting to add this tape in now, or waiting until now to add this tape in, because then when I do the section below, I have just enough sticky space to hold that card in place for me to build in the border in the next section. And now that we have that tape down, we won't get any icky in our sticky. Alright, that is going to be it for this tutorial on making a solid foundation. So I hope that you found this video helpful. If you did and you enjoyed it, please be sure to give it a like. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions, please be sure to leave them in the comment section below. And if you'd like to see more of my content as I create it, please be sure to hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you all have a wonderful day. Bye-bye, everybody.